I have agoraphobia. You know, fear of being outside. I've been in here since the Carter administration. But now, I'm going out there for the incredible Bed Bath & Beyond grand opening. It's like 11 stores in one. Linens, housewares, glassware, storage things, tons of name brands. Martex, Mikasa, Krups, Laura Ashley, all at incredible low prices every day. I am out of here.
Bed Bath & Beyond. Which... am I the only one who always got the names mixed up with Bath and Body Works? They are completely different companies, just so we're clear. Maybe it's the B names. In fact, while we're on the subject, later in the video we're going to be talking about a different company underneath Bed Bath & Beyond called Bye Bye Baby. And I think all these company founders should stop using the letter B because it's throwing me off and getting me confused and mixed up, and just pick a different letter, is really where I'm at with it. But anyway, Bed Bath & Beyond was founded in 1971, though not under that name. Beyond was added much later, and originally they were just called Bed and Bath. Nice and simple. The founders were Warren Eisenberg and Leonard Feinstein. Originally, they had worked at a place called Arlen's, which was a discount store. But that company was going through financial difficulties, and both of these men thought that the market was going to shift towards specialty stores that would be a lot less generalized and more focused on niche products. The first Bed and Bath was opened by them in Springfield, New Jersey, and they sold, well, the name, actually, pretty much. They focused mostly on household items, housewares, furniture, and stuff for your bathroom, things like that. And at first, they were remarkably successful, actually, but in order to stay competitive, they had to start making their stores larger, turning them into full-tilt big box stores. They opened the first one of those in 1985, and in 1987, they decided to change the company's name slightly to Bed Bath & Beyond, purely because of the larger stores. They had a lot more items, and many of those new items went beyond just Bed and Bath, hence Bed Bath & Beyond. Or BB&B if you want to be fancy. But either way, they did pretty well. By 1991, they opened 7 new superstores all across America, and that same year, they made their initial public offering on the NASDAQ stock exchange. They began to invest some of their earnings into themselves, investing in an integrated computer-based inventory management system in 1993. By 1996, they opened their 100th store in Irvine, California. And then they opened the 200th just 3 years later, in August of 1999. Their growth was pretty astonishing. They were doing exceedingly well, reaching $1 billion in sales for the first time, also in 1999. With all this extra cash just hanging about, they started acquiring a bunch of other companies, because of course they did, getting a hold of places like Harmon Discount Health and Beauty, which they changed the name of to just Harmon Face Values. They would also acquire that company I mentioned before, Bye Bye Baby, a company that had been founded by Leonard Feinstein's sons. They also began international expansion. Their first Canadian store was in Richmond Hill, Ontario. And by 2011, they had 1,142 different stores. But into the 2000s is where things started to go a bit downhill for them. And you'd think, how could they possibly screw this up? They're selling so well. They're doing so good. They're making a ton of money. What's the problem here? Well, like always, it's a few problems. For one thing, the online element was a relevant thing. Bed Bath & Beyond dragged their feet on doing an online shop, and that would cost them in the long term, but not enough to cripple them. What actually crippled them was activist investment. Which means I have to segue into a bit of an explanation, because what the heck is activist investment? Or shareholder activism? Well, it's a form of activism, as you might imagine, in which shareholders use their equity stakes in a corporation to put pressure on that corporation's management. It's generally, in my opinion, and in this context, a fancy name for, my god, these investors are annoying as all heck. It's generally utilized in situations where a full takeover bid is way more costly or difficult. As such, they use alternative methods to get a company to do whatever the heck they want, whether it be proxy battles, publicity campaigns, shareholder resolutions, litigation, and just straight up negotiations with management. It can be used for great good, but also great stupidity. It depends on who's actually doing the activizing. Is that even a word? I think I just made that up. Huh. But anyway, you know what I meant. In most cases, it's generally used to get a company to listen to their investors, rather than, ignore them. But sometimes the investors are wrong, and that's where shareholder activism can be more of a problem than a help. In Bed Bath & Beyond's case, they started spending a disgusting, just absolutely horrific, just gross amount of money to buy back their own shares from investors. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, a company buys back its own shares from investors for a handful of reasons, but in Bed Bath & Beyond's case, it was basically just a way to placate the investors who wouldn't shut up. Sometimes companies do it to reward investors, or to simply obtain more central control over themselves. It really depends on the situation, though in this instance, it was likely both of those things. By buying back their own shares, they managed to retain a lot of more direct control over themselves, so the activist investors weren't nearly as powerful. It also kind of shut up the activist investors, because by buying back their own shares, they actually drove up the price of their shares, because public offerings of the shares were that much rarer. The intent here was that, in the long run, those shares would go up and the company would be more valuable. It wasn't just a way to prop them up, because they really expected that things would get better. They didn't. And as I said, they spent a tremendous amount of money doing it. From 2004 until the end of their existence, they spent $11.8 billion on this. A significant portion of that money had to be borrowed, which is nice, but you have to pay that back, because it's like a loan, and they didn't. Well, I guess I shouldn't say didn't. I mean, that's true, but not in the sense that they refused to, just in the sense that they, literally could never do it. They at no point were able to pay back this gargantuan debt, and their stock price continued to fall, mostly due to other mistakes that were made. That whole internet issue was hurting them, and by 2019 they had to close 40 stores, although they were planning to open 15 new ones in better locations. That same year, in fact just a month after that announcement, May 13th, they announced that their CEO, Stephen Tamaris, was stepping down effective immediately, and he would resign his seat on the board. Mary Winston served as interim CEO, but on November 4th of that year, Mark Tritton, who had been the chief merchandising officer at Target, was hired on as Bed Bath & Beyond's CEO. Now, working at Target, you'd think Tritton would be a really good fit for this. After all, Target is pretty successful. They do pretty well. But the problem here is that Tritton's strategies, didn't work. At least in this context. For one thing, despite buying back a whole bunch of their shares, and yes, they kept doing that, the activist investors still kept being just obnoxious. 3 firms, Legion Partners, Macallum Advisors, and Ancora Advisors, were actually the ones that had pushed to remove Stephen Tamaris as CEO, as well as restructure the entire board of directors. 5 members of the board stepped down on April 22nd, and the company was forced to restructure their board to only 10 directors instead of 12. The activists pointed out perceived, shall we say, bias when it came to certain acquisitions, mainly with Bye Bye Baby. Remember, like I said, that store had been founded by Leonard Feinstein's kids, so it seemed like the acquisition was because it was family, not because it was a good call. At least according to the activist investors. But regardless of the context, everything was shaken up at Bed Bath & Beyond, but don't worry! Mark Tritton is here. He's gonna fix everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread. Did I say fix? I meant to say ruin. Ruin absolutely everything. What worked for Target did not work for Bed Bath & Beyond because Target is not a specialty store. Target is a general merchandise store. They're both big boxes, yes, but they have some key differences here, both in terms of how they should be laid out and in terms of their business practices. One of the benefits that Bed Bath & Beyond always had was coupons. Coupons, coupons, coupons.
Coupons.
As well as other promotional discounts. People loved Bed Bath & Beyond's coupons. And the nice thing about coupons is that they have to be brought into the store to be used. Online coupons do exist too, but in this case, people were using the coupons in the store and it was drawing foot traffic into the stores. Well, Tritton decided, no, coupons are stupid. Target never used coupons. Those are silly and old. Get rid of them. The coupons were reduced to an absolute minimum, and there were tighter restrictions on their use, which, oh good. That second thing is just a guaranteed way to make the customer hate your guts. But it gets even worse. Tritter wanted to run things like he had at Target, and he started replacing Bed Bath & Beyond's historical national brands with private label brands. This was an effort to increase margins, because the private label brands would have higher margins, because Bed Bath & Beyond owned them. And that's good, but there were two problems here. You were reducing a lot of the inventory in the stores, so there were just less stuff in your large retail outlets. Loyal customers didn't trust the new brands, and they had good reason not to, because most of the brands that Bed Bath & Beyond actually owned weren't of very good quality. The national brands had been decent quality. So while these private brands had better margins, they had the problem of not being bought by anyone. No one wanted them. And if no one's buying them, the margin is irrelevant. About the only good thing Tritton did was finally get the company into the online market in 2019. What? How did you wait that long? That's horrid! I concede in your market, it makes sense that a lot of people would want to come in to, test the furniture before they buy, and I agree, but 2019 before you have any kind of online store? Are you insane? Tritton must have thought so, and they did finally have an online shop, but they were well behind all of their competition. By that time, plenty of people were going to other places to get the kind of stuff that Bed Bath & Beyond sold. Whether it be Walmart, Amazon, or ironically Target, because yeah, Target had a lot of private label products, but a lot of their private label products were actually good. Bed Bath & Beyond's private labels weren't. And other Tritton, they spent a further $625 million buying back shares again. Yeah, they were still doing that even though they were struggling throughout the pandemic of all times. In order to stay afloat, they started divesting plenty of their subsidiaries. One Kings Lane was sold off to CSC Generation, and Christmas Tree Shops was also sold to Handel Holdings, LLC. Cost Plus World Market was sold to Front Burner LP. This selling of subsidiaries is clearly a desperate play to not go under, but sometimes it does need to happen. It was probably the right call in that situation. Not buying back your own shares. You should probably have stopped doing that years ago. But, debt is great and fun, and everyone loves it, right? Yeah, no. By 2022, they were on a steep decline. Tritton would leave and was replaced by Sue Gov in an interim capacity. And that August, they announced that 20% of their corporate staff would be laid off, and 150 stores were going to be closed down. Mind you, they had already closed 106 during the pandemic, and 37 more earlier that January. 150 on top of that was kind of a little concerning. There was also a class action lawsuit going on about this time. The lawsuit alleged that Bed Bath & Beyond stock had become a pump and dump scheme. It's a form of securities fraud that involves artificially inflating the price of an owned stock through false and misleading positive statements in order to sell the cheaply purchased stock at a higher price. But as a result of that lawsuit, on September 2nd, Gustavo Arnal, who was a chief financial officer of Bed Bath & Beyond, took his own life by jumping from the balcony of his New York City apartment, which is just cripplingly depressing, actually. 2 weeks after this, 56 more stores were targeted for closure. And in the beginning of 2023, Bed Bath & Beyond ended the year by turning to their investors and saying, hey, we probably won't survive this year. What an uplifting way of expressing yourself. Thank you so much. I'm sure the investors felt really, really happy about you telling them that. I respect the honesty, but also, wow. On January 5th, their share price plunged almost 30% of the stock market. Really? Why? They just said they probably won't survive another year. You thought their stock was gonna go up? Ah! On January 26th, Bed Bath & Beyond announced that some of the banks had actually cut off their lines of credit, which is always good. Now you can't even get loans to stay afloat. That's neat. And they began shuttering stores left and right, even non-BB&B brands. They closed down the Harmon Face Values chain entirely, all 52 locations, and 5 Bye Bye Baby stores were slated to be shut down. 87 more Bed Bath & Beyond locations would also be closed. And on February 10th, it was revealed that they were going to shutter their entire Canadian division. Really, they were just closing down everything. Just everything. They were closing down as much as they could, trying in vain to get profitable, but there was just too much debt. They had borrowed so much money, just a stupid, disgusting amount of money, to buy their own stocks, remember? They never paid that off, and it was absolutely destroying them. As such, on April 23rd, 2023, Bed Bath & Beyond, Bye Bye Baby, and 73 affiliated debtors and entities officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protections. Though it was revealed later that every single store under both brands would be shut down unless a buyer was found for the chain. They couldn't remain open otherwise. And even if they did find a buyer, shareholders could be expected to be wiped out. Although if you still owned a share in Bed Bath & Beyond at this point, what is wrong with you? Did you honestly think it was going to get better? It wasn't. The reason the shareholders wouldn't be getting anything is that debt. Proceeds from any liquidation was going straight to the creditors, and their stock was delisted by May 3rd. And due to the bankruptcy, by April 26, Bed Bath & Beyond stopped accepting the coupons that they were so famous for. They still had some in circulation even after Triton, but they weren't taking them. Interestingly, a bunch of other retailers, including places like the Container Store, Big Lots, Boscov's, and Kirkland's, who were unaffiliated and in many ways competitors to Bed Bath & Beyond, seized the day for some good old-fashioned marketing and announced that they would in fact honor the unused Bed Bath & Beyond coupons for a limited time. Restructuring Bed Bath & Beyond showed that it was not going to happen. They just weren't going to stay afloat. They couldn't even find a buyer. They continued through liquidation. Their last stores closed permanently on July 30th, 2023. But some of you might be saying, hey, BedBathAndBeyond.com still exists. That means the company still exists. Well, you're really smart. I bet you think so. But you're wrong. That BedBathAndBeyond.com is not Bed Bath & Beyond at all. It is in fact an entirely separate company in disguise. You guys remember Overstock.com? You may have seen their commercials before, and they're much in the same market as Bed Bath & Beyond, except they were online. In a June 2023 bankruptcy auction, Overstock.com acquired the Bed Bath & Beyond name and the associated intellectual property. Once the last brick-and-mortar stores were shuttered, Overstock.com changed their name to Bed Bath & Beyond. They just took the name. Like I said, it's just Overstock.com, but in disguise. The original Bed Bath & Beyond is well and truly dead. Well, almost. Just like the Radio Shack, it is time for us to venture forth south of the border to El Mexico! Yeah, as it turns out, the Mexican branch of Bed Bath & Beyond was completely unaffected by the closure of the American and Canadian branches. The Mexican branch is doing fine. Still, to this day, they're just fine. They're just chilling, hanging out, vibing, selling furniture. That's what they do. So, if you still want to go to a Bed Bath & Beyond, you just have to go to Mexico. Yeah, one of those things, I guess. And with that, a special thank you go to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Ruru Videos, Lord of 444, Icer for 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Redline, Ennis Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, Dub Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Josh Johnson, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Linsky, JBL Explorers, Tom Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131, Jess 232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terrevel, Hayden DeGrow, No, Kurt Forkham, Mr. Sleepy, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Liam Wright, Morris Silman Productions, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Duraushi, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Eric Hutton, AET Museum, NJ 1969, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, Ryan Wehofer, Jared Brussel, Zintac M, Boss K, Orange Glass, Andy, The Conceptualist, Acoletti, Ohio Trucker 1, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.